This is the weekly wrap up presented by the Conversation Project, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne. This is the simple, very simple form, a wrap up of news stories we posted all week in the conversation feeds on Facebook and X, and talked about at least most of them in this course of the week in our daily submission of news headlines. We call that things you might not have heard every single weekday morning at 5:50 a.m. live and recorded live or in video for the remainder of lifetimes. For that, we give you the latest in the news for the day prior. For Monday, it's the weekend prior, to go to your conversations to get started with various people out there to know what's in the know. For this thing here, this podcast, we are going to provide for you the true top 10 stories of the week from everything we posted. We take the pure numbers of data from Monday through Monday and give it to you right here with the top 10 stories that you said were conversational. We give you a bit more perspective as well by giving you what we call the almost rans. These are stories 11 through 15, obviously not quite top 10 material, but very, very close. And of course, some real perspective on what you didn't care about with the almost irrelevant story of the week. This one, number 240 for the week, is pretty much really irrelevant. This one is one that really makes no sense, really has no real dealings with what's going on. Most times they're just stories that get lost in the shuffle. This one is a story that not only got lost in the shuffle, no one really cared about because it was pretty much not worthy of talking about. But it happened. We put it there for filler and you guys ignored it. We'll not ignore it coming forward. We'll explain how the feeds work in a bit when we get to the promotions part. But essentially, what you're doing is you're following us on Facebook and X, and then you tell us those stories, how they go to talk about. We'll go deeper into that and deeper into our other offering for the weekend, which is called the Story of the Week. We'll go dive into one of the stories in the top 10 and editorialize on one of those stories because you said it was important. We do a little extra deep into one of those. We'll tell you how we pick that as well in a moment. Go to our website. This is theconversationproject.com to see more details about what we do all week long, and email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. So you can give us the wording on what to do, what not to do, what to do better, and what to not do so worse. Right now, let's get into those stories. The 10 stories for this week's counting down Casey Kasem style from 10 to 1 to tell you which story you told us was the most conversational for this actual weekend. And we start off with story at number 10. And we're going to get back to Britney Spears again. She also made an almost ran that is interesting, but here's the one that actually made it top 10 for the week. Sam Agari unfollows Britney Spears on Instagram after she agrees to pay his $10,000 apartment. It's that simple. Her almost soon-to-be former husband or some such, they're getting divorced. It's all working out. It's very tense, and the social media battles are getting pretty big between the two and, the differing sides. Apparently, Sam Agarshi has a side, and people aren't taking his side. What's happened? Britney has reportedly agreed to pay for Sam's $10,000 a month apartment so that there's less of a financial sort of spat in the actual dispute for the divorce. Even though Britney is basically having divorce parties and throwing videos of herself, essentially walking around with shirtless men and being mostly not very much clothed herself. In the meantime, because Sam's apparently embarrassed or something, he has unfollowed Britney on Britney Spears' social media because of all the lack of skin, lack of clothing, lack of skin. Yeah, all the crazy stuff Britney's doing to flaunt the fact that she's now more or less almost free. Sam's kind of off of that, so he's not following her. Although Britney is still paying his rent because that's how rich people work. The story at number 9. It's a very complicated story that is stretching beyond the borders of anything of sanity at this point. The headline reads, "The Michael Oher blindside scandal shows that Hollywood studios are just pretending to follow the law when they buy life story rights." This is a really big deep dive into how Hollywood works and doesn't work when they're buying the rights to the true lives or things like that, when they embellish things. Apparently the whole conservatorship thing that allowed the Tuohys to make a lot of money on the blind side, or apparently made little money and a lot of money on his likeness beyond is a secret that's so open in Hollywood that it should not even be open. Many people talk about the truth behind stories based on true story. Yes, on the Titanic, there really wasn't a Rose and Jack, doing I'm flying things. That obviously was not real. But the whole story, how real was it? Ship did sink. That did happen. But in a lot of cases, there's monopolies on this truth and the stories that are told by the people who get film rights for things like that. But one of the weirdest things about this is the fact that, remember, the truth history is actually public domain. When something's put out there and you have it in a book, you can more or less write about it, do about it, see what you need about it. If you're talking about Jefferson, just go get a couple of books about Jefferson and you have what you need about Jefferson, or George Jefferson if you want to. The big thing is, if you're claiming to use a serial source, such as The Blind Side, as a source for a movie, then the rights get a little bit weird. There's one thing to go through newspaper articles and figure out what happened in a thing. It's something else to take someone's full work and translate it into something that works for the theater, works for the screen, which is where this thing comes. A lot more time spent on the Michael Oher story than even Michael Oher probably cares about, but it's a big deal. On those things that are based off true stories and people's life rights turned into movies and books and media, you got to be worried about who owns the rights and what they're doing with the books, movies, and media. This guy is not worried about much anything. He probably should. At number 8 this week, Kanye West and wife, that's in quotes, banned for life for boarding Venice boats after indecent exposure. Kanye West and his wife, Bianca Kensori, who we're not sure they're actually technically married, but they're doing the thing, got on some boats in Venice with the pants down. Like, literally. Kanye West is walking around with his pants down, and Ken Centauri has on this trench coat, doing the whole I'm naked in the trench coat thing. And the company that runs various bunch of boats in Venice have basically banned him for life for that. They're going through towns, going through the water, just drawing through town in the boats with pants down and trench coat and whatever, being Kanye at this point. At this point, like I said when we originally posted, this is one we actually made for the morning show. And we check in on Kanye when we can because we care for Kanye. I'm not sure at this point why we actually care for Kanye, but we care. We want him to do good, do better. This is definitely not good and better. In fact, they even reached out to Kim Kardashian, who was said to be desperately embarrassed and worried by his pantsless antics in Venice. I'm not sure why they actually called her up to ask for that, but they did. Because apparently she's still his business. He's still her business. I don't know. It makes no sense. Another story that is kind of interesting but makes little sense is at 7 this week. You cared about Ronda Rousey, who wants to get back in the MMA and actually get back at UFC 300 after she has moved on from WWE. Now, she had a very public storyline that wrote her off the WWE, where she was beaten by her best friend and sometimes rival in a match at the last pay-per-view. It was made to be MMA style and was, it was there, but it was really to write her off because in the world of professional wrestling, the kayfabe stuff is everything that happens on screen is supposed to be real. So when they're yelling at each other, you're supposed to believe they yell at each other. This is a case where Ronda Rousey basically was done with WWE and had to be written off forever. She was done. But now she wants to get back into the octagon like now. She thinks she's going to fight at UFC 300. She thinks she's ready to go now. Dana White, who used to own and now basically manages the UFC, told Sports Illustrated that it's not going to happen. There's no way it's going to happen. The big thing is Ronda Rousey won everything she could. She accomplished everything in MMA. Coming back even on a winning streak is more or less a tarnishment, more or less just a kind of waste of time. It's Jordan coming back for a third time to play in Washington. It doesn't make any sense except for the fact he's Michael Jordan and maybe people come buy some tickets and watch him play. Not that Ronda Rousey would not be good in the ring. She just an octagon in this case. It's just the fact that she's already won everything. What she has to prove, and she really has to prove nothing to the new folks because they're probably just as scared of her as anyone else is. The story at number 6 is an odd one. It's one we didn't really want to get into, but it was just such a big thing late in the week. In fact, we posted it last week late, and he sort of meandered for a bit. Parenting advice YouTuber Ruby Frank arrested on suspicion of child abuse. And I'm going to keep saying it as Frank because it's got an E in it, but that's the way I pronounced it. So until someone actually tells me otherwise in comments, it's Frank. Ruby Frank was arrested on Wednesday night in southern Utah, the city of Irvins. She appeared in YouTube videos with Jody Hildebrand that posted online by Hildebrand's counseling business, Connections Classroom. Now, what the problem with this is the Frank family, or Frank herself, is known for being a kind of a strict disciplinarian in YouTube, basically telling parents they have to really be strict on the stuff they do. Now, why was she arrested? And actually had more charges later in the week. Child abuse. They actually found 4 of her children tied up with tape around their hands in their home and took them away to child services. Her and her husband are now in very serious problems with this one. Number one, kicked off, the YouTube stuff, which is there. Number two, the suspicions of child abuse gets worse and worse and larger as more cases are popping up, more charges are being filed. Once again, this comes about to a thing I said a few times this week, where the people you see on screen, yes, I'm just a dude in shaded glasses telling you news stories, but you don't really know who I am or what's going on. Maybe you believe what I do for this thing here with the news, but you don't actually know me unless you actually know me. And I may let you inside some things, but until there's some exposés and people care that much about me, I don't have enough followers to anybody to care that much. You don't really get the details. Some of them get kind of weird. Some of them get made up just to make something big. But this is a person that people follow for their advice or for their infamous advice or fame or just for hate watching, to find out that they're bad people. Really bad people. Not bad people, but Jonas, and Sophie Turner are calling it quits for their marriage, divorcing after 4 years of marriage. Joe Jonas officially filing. Now, we earlier had reports over the last couple of weeks of Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner going towards divorce, and then we had the filing. Literally the day that we did this thing popped up, early morning, we had the story that Joe Jonas was still wearing his wedding ring, and then later on that day, had officially filed for divorce. Officially, the irreconcilable differences, essentially, the marriage just isn't working. We are just backing away from this one right now, watching it go as the progression goes. No ill feelings at the moment we're seeing from this. This is not turned into a Britney Spears thing yet, but the conversational things are things people talk about. People talk about famous people and their relationships. This is one that they're talking about. We'll keep up with this one and give you updates, and you keep telling us whether we're going to keep it conversational. The fourth story for this week: Hurricane Lee expected to intensify into extremely dangerous Category 4 storm by weekend. Then he posted this on Thursday, and by the weekend, it was actually a Category 5. It's currently a Category 5. It's in the Atlantic, Caribbean, kind of floating around. It's not set to hit very much damage. Right now, it's not set to hit landfall. It could turn and go deeper and hit some islands in the Bahamas, and it could go up straight and turn and hit Florida. If it goes to Bahamas, it's probably going to come back and hit the mainland of the United States. Right now, it's sort of just meandering, if you will. It's a pretty big storm, and it's got to end up someplace, but landfall at the moment, as we speak these words on the 9th of September, currently not expected, or not expected to be anything huge. But as we saw, tornadoes and hurricanes away from mainland in Florida can still cause issues. Number 3, this is a story that was weird, really weird, and we're glad for the outcome, but also just weirded out by it and the way the internet works. Fans for actor Josh Peck were relieved to learn that he was alive and well because, as the headline for number 3 reads, Josh Peck fans panic before realizing RIP Josh is trending for MAGA Crusader. A man known as MAGA Josh, who basically does commentary on social media, died this weekend or last weekend. And the issue was RIP Josh went all over the internet as the hashtag, as the trending topic. And so naturally people thought it was Josh Peck. I'm not sure how that's natural because there's plenty of other people. It could have been Josh Dumel, could have been any other famous Josh, the guy that played Thanos, that guy. Plenty of Joshes out there who were famous who could have died, that people could have said RIP and whatever. But it was literally I'll say a nobody, if you will, a person who was a commentary in the social media world for MAGA folks called MAGA Josh, who just basically parroted things out there that were crazy. And people took this to say that the actor Josh Peck had died. Now, his counterpart, Drake Bell, who's in the news a lot for a lot of crazy stuff, by comparison, where things popped up is where I guess people sort of pulled this into it. But the only thing Josh Peck has done lately is being on a couple podcasts talking about being a Nickelodeon star and, of course, glossing himself up Vaseline inside of Oppenheimer because his character asked for it. That's all we got for Josh Peck. Very much alive. We do send thoughts and prayers to people who care for MAGA Josh, but we're going to not care for MAGA Josh. I would just leave it at that. The number 2 story, big time, this one, Barstool Sports to cut staff by nearly 25% as mass layoffs loom. This one was posted on Friday. We did a little video on this on Saturday, and it was a big old deal for you guys. You cared about the Barstool Sports. Now, Barstool Sports is about a decade, probably 15-year-old entity at this point, originally popping up in the blog wars, if you will, of sort of the bad boys of sports, bad boys of all sort of entertainment, taking the the manly turn, if you will, on covering things in sports world and in politics as they went to that. Dave Portnoy, the owner of Barstool Sports, originally owner, sold it to Penn Entertainment. They blew the whole thing up, screwed it up. The band is worth a lot less, and sold it back to Portnoy for $1. And now Portnoy is trying to bring his business back to life, and he's got to cut the staff. Says things are bloated, things are just not working, and he's got to find a way to make it a win again for what's going on. The move to be a part of ESPN did not cover anything they needed it to happen. In fact, it basically killed the brand from all practical purposes. Portnoy is trying to bring it back to life, and this is his way. The way it is for these things. I always hate any type of media losing jobs, but also like to see media, no matter how crazy they are, survive and thrive as long as they're being fair. Barstool Sports is something that a lot of people love. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I don't necessarily hate it that much. It's not a OAN type stuff where they're just spouting out lies. They're just, being misogynist and stuff like that, which sells. So Barstool Sports is probably going back to more of that stuff, but more of that stuff with less people on staff very soon. We are going to now hype up the next story, which is the number one story for the week. And we hype it up because it deserves it. It deserves to get the love that it needs for earning its right for the work it did to get there. Now, this story is the number one story in Twitter for the week. The top story in Facebook, which I didn't mention earlier, was Joe Jonas and divorce. That was the biggest Facebook story of the week. For Twitter, X, this one is right here. Its story is 20% more engaging than the story we just did talking about Barstool Sports. It also is more engaging by the story at the very bottom, 240 by 800,000, 900%, almost 1,000,000% more engaging than that story. And it received 12.87%, 13% of all the engagement this week went to this story at number one. And that story headline, which should not surprise you, Burning Man Festival Exodus begins through drying mud. Burning Man lasted a little more than the week that it normally does because, a rainstorm popped in last week, made a big old money mess, and people got stuck. And various people who were like, yeah, this ain't so fun anymore, escaped or tried to escape, finding some stuck, and then did also the weirdness to get out of here. The actual Exodus was beginning Monday, Tuesday, when enough of the mud dried so they can actually open the roads or get out of the mud and get going. And then, of course, once the people who were just sort of there left, people who loved the event, who were there for the meeting, if you will, stick around to clean up the stuff that was left behind by many people who just were trying to flee. This is something that brings out the best and the worst in the Burning Man crowd because, as the folks at Burning Man will tell you, it is a peace and love type thing. It's a way for about 70,000 people or so, about 100,000 people in most cases, to find themselves in the middle of the desert, build a sustaining economy, and then leave it after a week free and clear. All the trash, all the waste, everything gets taken out of the Burning Man site. What happened this year was they received less than an inch of rain in about a day, which is, oddly enough, 3 months worth of rain in about a day. And that made the sands, the deep, white, beautiful sands, into a really thick muck that was unable to basically traverse for 3 or 4 days. You saw the memes, you saw the videos, you saw pictures of people like Chris Rock and DJ Diplo riding the back of trucks when they finally got themselves out there. You've heard talks of people marching 6 miles to get outside of the mud zone in the middle of town to whatever dry part of road there was just to get out there and try to get rides back. It was a nightmare. Or was it a nightmare? We're going to come back to Burning Man in the almost rans because there's another story attached to that coming forward. But this is for the things that a lot of the comments we got for people who watched our videos and watched the stuff we had was the fact that they were so glad they are so poor they could not afford to go to Burning Man because that sounded like hell, like actual burning men in hell, as opposed to just watching an effigy burn just for the fun of it. That, my friends, is the number one story for this week. You chose the Burning Man story to be the biggest thing to talk about in the entire week long. And now we're going to tell you about what we have coming up in the upcoming podcast, Story of the Week. We're going to hype up the story that was chosen to represent the editorializing of the top 10 stories. Now, we do this by taking the top 10 stories and rearranging them in different order and then basically battling out the headlines one by one till we get a top 2, and then we figure out which of those 2 is the one we go forward with. This week, Our top story, the story we are going to highlight, is the one we just talked about. Burning Man Festival exodus begins through drying mud. That's going to be the top story we'll expound on in the story of the week, which, trust me, will be much more word friendly than this thing right here. Just the whole life in Burning Man, why Burning Man, and why this one little rainstorm isn't going to kill it, but will change it forever. The runner-up story this week, the Michael Oher blindside scandal, shows that Hollywood studios are just pretending to follow the law when they buy life story rights. This is a very deep and detailed thing about story rights and how to get turned into things. Your various random Lifetime movie that's based off a true story that turns into, the burning bed, starts as something that is sort of makes sense and then turns into something really wild or super saccharine, because that's what sells. They take a basic story and turn it into whatever they need it to be, so it might as well be a fantasy, but you say based on a true story and it piques interest. That story we're not going to cover. We're going to spend our time talking about Burning Man because I don't have the money to go to Burning Man, so I want to make fun of all those who do. Send your hate as you want to now. We're going to take a quick break away from the news. When we come back, we're going to give you the almost rans, including a return back to Britney Spears' life and back to Burning Man, oddly enough. So that happened this week. Plus, we'll give you the almost relevant story of the week, which is pretty much irrelevant, but we're going to talk about that. Quick bit of ads and some promotions, talk about how the feeds work in just a bit, but you'll hear that coming up after this break. This is the weekly wrap up from the Conversation Project for the week ending September the 9th, 2023. Let's do a sponsor hit, shall we? And because it is the 9th of September and football is in the air, or technically on the ground, we want to talk about YouTube TV. Your TV, because sports is life and TV is on sports, and so TV is life. YouTube TV is your greatest way to break away from your cable cutting life. If you've not cut the cord yet, try YouTube TV. If you had tried other services, you might want to try YouTube TV. And the biggest thing is NFL football started this week on Thursday with the opening game with the upset of the Kansas City Chiefs, that being a pretty big deal coming forward. In the meantime, most of the games will start on tomorrow, and so you want to see a game that's out of your market, Sunday Ticket is your way to do it, and NFL Sunday Ticket is the exclusive rights hold it. Say that 3 times fast. The rights to NFL Sunday Tickets are exclusively held by YouTube TV, so there's no way around them. Find YouTube TV right now and cut the cord. You get six accounts for 6 different DVRs that are all on your own on any device. Your phone, your tablet, your computer, your smart TV, whatever can pull the internet feed, you can watch your TV on there, and Sunday Ticket and your DVR and live local channels. Plus, take it where you want to. Often when I go to visit my folks in Louisiana, I go and I can still watch the same TV that I had up here in Arkansas because the channels are there. Now, check it out and you'll find it for yourself. Check us out at YouTube2TV. Our affiliate link is theconversationproject.com/YouTube TV. This is theconversationproject.com/YouTube TV. And guess what? How about an extra $15 off because you came from us? Yes, they'll give you something off for your brand new account, but get an extra $15 off from us by using our link at YouTube TV. You will not be disappointed. And like I said, rah, 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 football. The Conversation Project lives at thisistheconversationproject.com, and you can find what we do 7 days a week. We have 5 days of a live program doing the news every single weekday morning. We have a weekend of this thing here, doing the wrap-up show, and the other podcast, which is, of course, a deep detail in one thing on the wrap-up show. We have different things popping up. We're going to try to do some Sunday things, some little quick hits there as well that are sort of branded going forward, because we've got to hit that deadline, got to get those followers, got to get those likes and those conversions, if you will. And if you like what we're doing, we would like you to help us out a little bit. If you want to be a part of the show, the simplest thing to do is to follow us on our feeds. Go to facebook.com/thisisconversationproject or Twitter or x.com and th_conversation. And when I say the top Twitter story, top Facebook story, that's because your engagement on Twitter and Facebook give us literally the numbers to talk about. We take your engagement score for every single morning, convert that into a top score, That number gives us what stories are the tops for the morning. And for Friday, or for Tuesday through Friday, we give you 8 stories from top 15 stories of the day. Come Monday, we give you 10 stories from top 30 stories of the weekend. That's how that's done. Today, of course, we take all the stories from the entire week, give you those top 10 stories for here, and we'll expound on that, like I said, in the story of the week. Do that in the feeds. Go to our email, or your email, and email us at the conversation inbox at gmail.com. You can tell us how well we're doing. If you like what we're doing and want to help us financially, go to our sponsors page, visit any of our sponsors, and we get a commission for those. Go to our partnerships page and find ways you can connect with us to help us get things going. We need a lot of help to get things going. There's a lot of things going on for the Conversation Project, a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And if you follow my story, you've been here a couple times, a lot of things going for the house that is being rebuilt because of the tornado that hit about 6 months ago. A lot going on. So if you enjoy what we're doing here and want me to keep doing this one, I'd appreciate it. I'm sure other folks as well that cannot financially add to what's going on, but get the joys of it anyway. See us at the Conversation Project. Visit the partnerships page. Visit the sponsors page. Follow us on our feeds and find out where we are so you can get this either in a video form, in an audio form, in a newsletter form, or whatever form you want to. Let us know about that in the emails you send us as well. And we thank you so much for just being a part of the Conversation Project's family. The weekly wrap-up continues now as we wrap up the stories that didn't quite count, but still pretty engaging anyway. These are the almost ran, stories 11 through 15 that obviously aren't in the top 15, but we're close. And most of these we actually did talk about in our daily program, things you might have heard. Most of them are high enough there in the rankings, but in the final top 10, not quite there. This one I didn't talk about because it seemed kind of silly, but you guys liked it. Dan Orlovsky abruptly hangs up on Pat McAfee after getting mocked for thinking he resembles John Krasinski. This is actually a bit more layered than it should be, but here we go. Pat McAfee had Dan Orlovsky on his radio TV show, and they ended up with a bit of a heated exchange because Orlovsky was found himself with Stephen A. Smith in a commercial for Denzel Washington's film The Equalizer 3. So he's sort of in the film. That happened. Now, McAfee applauded him for his daring and basically saying he looks like a famous actor. Orlovsky was like, mean that guy from The Office? Meaning John Krasinski, which everybody laughed. And they said, no, Paul Walter Hauser was what's going on. Orlovsky didn't know who that guy was, so he hung up. And that happened this week. Also what happened this week, Justin Bieber going deeper into his soul, saying that he wished he had saved himself from marriage while his wife, Haley, does not regret anything in her past. The Biebers apparently are doing well, which is great, but Justin Bieber, known for being kind of a player, even though he started off as like a 14-year-old singer, and going into doing the bad boy stuff, basically saying that he wished that he had been a bit more pure, maybe not so much chaste, but would have waited for his wife to actually appear because of the love of his life. And Haley Bieber's like, nah, I'm good. This was all seen on the Facebook series, The Biebers on Watch, which is literally watching the Biebers. I can find more things to do than watch the Biebers, but this is not about me. This is about you. What you see is conversational. And you guys watching Haley and Justin sort of beef over whose sex lives was better or worse before they got married is what you guys were into this week. You're also into Adam Driver, who I believe is kind of a weirdo, but he's a great actor, still kind of a weirdo. And this week, he slammed the major studios amid the strike at the Venice Film Festival for the premiere of Ferrari. He was there addressing the SAG-AFTRA strike at the Venice Film Festival, saying that his movie Ferrari is exempt from the strike rules and that he's proud to be a visual representation of the movie that is not a part of the AMPTP. Essentially, because it was not a part of that group of people producing it, he could, hang out and he can actually promote it. So there's that. He also said that small distribution companies can meet the dream demands of the SAG-AFTRA, but Netflix and Amazon can't. He added that the SAG members support movies that have agreed to the interim agreement. It makes it more obvious that these people are willing to support the people they collaborate with. Basically saying, you know what? Y'all can stop beefing. This thing can be settled pretty quickly, even though Netflix and Amazon have their issues in the way they work, their business model. How they fix that? A bit more complicated, but Adam Driver, right now, the only actor basically chanting anything about what's going on with the strike, because there's an exemption, a weird one that gives him the chance to kind of spout on stuff. But like I said, he goes for the sort of the fringe stuff. So there you go. I told you we'd be back to Burning Man. MTG, that is Marjorie Taylor Greene for those uninitiated, said stuck Burning Man festival goers are being brainwashed. Very quickly on this one. 70,000 people in the Burning Man were stuck after the flood of rain happened in the middle of the Nevada campsite. Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene said in an interview out loud with words that were recorded and seen by people that the people were probably being brainwashed about climate change. Since they were stuck, they were just being brainwashed the fact that that was climate change and climate change is bad. She also implied that the recent flooding event was an act of God against the festival goers, which I'm not sure that's how that works, but whatever. Words were said, words were recorded, people heard those words, and people scratched their heads, like me, who don't understand how people want these type of people, like her, representing us. She's not my representative by far, but I'm not sure who these people, what was so bad about the other guy or gal that they voted for this person. I don't understand. Number 15 story, returning back to Britney Spears. This was a big one that a lot of people got into. We actually did a quick video on this one as well. Britney Spears was relieved to stop paying child support to Kevin Federline for eldest son Sean after he turns 18. Sean, eldest son of the two, Britney and Kevin, although neither son is talking to Britney right now because of a whole lot of things, was being paid, Kevin, or Sean in a sense, child support. $60,000 a month was being paid in 2016, but an extra $15,000 a month for school and extra activity for the boys. So they're living a life up via Britney Spears from Kevin Federline. Kevin Federline essentially moved the kids to Hawaii, moved themselves to Hawaii because there is a stipulation that there's a longer period of collecting your child support. Problem is, it's based on where the actual agreement was made, California probably. So Sean is 18, child support is done. Kevin Federline stops getting support, more or less, it's done because Britney is up on her child support. That's the good news. The bad news is Britney's not speaking to her children, who are now 18 and 16, I believe the next one is. So that's not good. We want wholeness for Britney Spears. The whole point of the Free Britney movement was to give her wholeness. And right now, it looks like wholeness is the furthest thing from the truth for the Spearses. All the Spearses. Every single one of the Spearses. In fact, her other ex-husband did some stupid stuff this week too. So it was a whole lot of Britney and ex-husbands for this week. Let's get the wrap-up part. I want to remind you that you can follow us at our website. This is theconversationproject.com to find more details on everything that is done, everything we do, all the stuff going on with the Conversation Project at our home online. This is theconversationproject.com. Also, email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com for all your love and some of your hate. Save some of the hate for yourself. Hold it inside. Let it fuel you like a burning anger to overtake and overcome. But send some our way if you don't like what we're doing. Meanwhile, our feeds, we still say Twitter on the slide, I know, so it's X if you want to. That's TH Conversation for the Twitter/X, and Facebook.com at this is a conversationproject.com. Now, this story, as we said, 800,000% less engaging than the top story this week, which was Burning Man, by no surprise, because this one has no real merit, has this headline. College student cashes in on $500,000 playing Virginia scratch-off game. I'm not even sure how this got put in here, but it did. A lady named Lillian Gutierrez Silva, good for her, a college student, bought a funky fortune scratch-off card on a whim, and it gave her $500,000. She's going to use that to pay for her education. That is it, and that is all. I am Jay Cleveland Payne. That has been the weekly wrap-up for the week ending September the 9th, 2023. Thank you so much for being with us for the ride that is the Conversation Project every single day, and for this particular ride here for the weekly wrap-up. We cannot do this without you because you put the words into my mouth every single day, every single week with these shows. How do you do that? Follow us on our feeds on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook.com/This is a Conversation Project, Twitter.com/TH_conversation, X.com/TH_conversation. We, as your news side piece, offer up to you the best in news that is supplemental, a little bit of the mainstream, a little bit of the weird, and we try to see which ones battle out for the best ones. Coming up in a bit, a few hours after we produce this one, we'll finish up wrapping up on the story of the week, talking about the Burning Man in ways that everyone else has talked about, but it's my podcast, so I get a chance to do it as well. In the meantime, what 10 stories are we talking about for next week? Well, on Monday, you'll find out what stories will wrap up the weekend. But on next Friday and Saturday, we will find out what top 10 stories you said survived the entire week and were the most conversational. So until next Saturday or Friday, if we did it early, thank you so much for being a part of the Conversation Project's family. Thanks so much for being a part of the weekly wrap-up. We will see you or hear you, or you can read us in the commentary next week.